So up until just about a year ago, I was making a huge mistake without even really realizing it. And this is that I was building my business really in a silo by myself. I was not meeting up with other entrepreneurs. I was not going to events or anything like that. And it really limited my mindset and my potential of what I thought was possible, and also just keeping me on track and being around people that were also doing big things and also thought the same way that I thought and had similar aspirations and dreams and motivations and just the right way of looking at life like I did, and that I wasn't happy just settling for the basic type of shit that most people kind of just find themselves stuck in. And this is fresh in my mind because I just got back from CapCon. That is the Capitalism conference, which is thrown by Ryan Daniel Moran. And Ryan is genuinely one of the entrepreneur leaders who has for sure impacted me the most directly, in terms of I follow plenty for motivation or things like that, but Ryan, if I really think back in what I've actually done, so much of it has directly come from things he's put out for free on podcasts, and that's why I am super happy to talk highly of him to you guys and hopefully bring some attention to him. And also just, I want to tell you what I learned at this conference, because this is a high-level conference. Tickets are not cheap, and statistically speaking, if you're watching my video, you probably weren't there. I did get to meet a lot of you, but I figure for those of you that weren't there, I wanted to just share, and so you can extract what I gained from going to this event and being around so many people that are owners of million-dollar businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses. At one point, Ryan said, raise your hand if you have a 7-figure business, and more than half the room of 500 people raised their hands. And many of the speakers have 9-figure businesses. Some have sold for billions or a billion or somewhere up there. So 9 and 10-figure entrepreneurs, and wanted to share the things that I've learned so that you can extract them after I extracted them from them and use them for yourself. So let's get into what I learned. So one of the first things that stuck out to me was a commonality across a few different speakers, and it's something that I personally talk about sometimes, so I was really excited to hear it, like, being out there a lot more, was that, you know, to be successful in business and to really build your life to be optimized the way you're wanting to, business is a piece of that, but so is relationships, so is taking care of your health. So there was a big focus on that. For example, Alex Charfen, who is, I don't know if it's a book or if it's just his sort of blueprint, but it's called The Billionaire Code. And he put together some slides that I might try to link if I can. But it was showing like all the different levels of entrepreneurship that you have to sort of pass through to get to the next level, and what's required and what's holding you back at those stages. But both he and David Osborne, who is mega successful, 9 figures, flew in a private jet just in and out for his talk, both of them talked about fitness and taking care of yourself in a way that gives you more energy to deploy into the areas of your life that you want to put energy into. And now this is something that I'm hugely into, kind of the whole realm of biohacking and optimizing sleep and optimizing diet and all these things to try to have more energy so that I'm not just running on empty all the time. So it was cool to see that as a common thread in a couple ones, because that's something that I take really, I'm super into that. Like, I'm probably more into that than I am into actually producing in business and stuff. I'm just like super geeky, nerded out on that optimization, productivity, optimize the life type of stuff. So by the way, this video might be a little jumbled and scattered, but I'm literally just going through my notes here and talking on the biggest takeaways, the things that really stood out to me. So the next one that was really interesting to me was Kevin Lavelle. He's the founder of Mizzen in Maine. They make these athletic material dress shirts, and it was a very disruptive physical product. I first heard about it years ago because he was advertising on the Tim Ferriss show, and I believe they were way smaller back then, so it's really cool to hear how they've truly scaled. They're in every Nordstrom now. I mean, they're clearly at a much bigger scale. I think they have 60 or something employees now, and that was just an interesting case study to see how like a disruptive product can really have these hockey stick sort of, not even hockey stick, just consistent growth to the point where it's not just a micro brand or something like that. So it's a really interesting case study that I feel like I've almost partially firsthand witnessed, because I've heard of them since what was probably relatively early on in the journey. So that was just really cool to hear from the founder and CEO of them. Next thing that stuck out as very important was exactly what I need at my level that I currently am. As you may have noticed, I've been pretty scattered. I've been pretty I haven't been working a lot, to be honest. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. You know, the beauty of it is I've built my business to a point where I had that luxury, right? But I also sort of lost that drive. I haven't been on a good schedule. I haven't been getting things done consistently. And it's crazy how important it is, even at the highest levels, even when you're talking about, you know, $10 million businesses and 100 million, just how much there is on like scheduling and focus and blocking off time for fun too and stuff like that. And this was in common with David Osborne really talking about goals, and Craig Ballantyne wrote this book. They've passed it out to the VIP people, so I'm checking that out. But he is really known for scheduling and things like that. So that's like something that's so obvious. That sounds like almost silly that you'd be talking about that type of stuff at like a high level event, but it's crazy. And if you really think about it, like that stuff has massive impact. If you can just figure out how to be a little more efficient or time block yourself to, even if it's not for productivity reasons, but just to enjoy life more. I mean, that is a massive ROI if you're blocking off time to do the things that you really care about. And then when you're not doing those things, you're doing your work. Like, rather than being, I think this is a problem that I've had and that probably a lot of you watching have now or have had, is that like you're not really working and you're not really having fun either. And to me, the goal is that when you're working, and when you're chilling, you're chilling. And it shouldn't be that when you're chilling, you're really worrying about work, and that when you're working, you are thinking about all the things you'd rather be doing. It should just be like, I'm doing this and I'm not thinking about that, and trying to block those things off. Those first couple things are really like boiled down to focus, time management, having enough energy. So it's amazing how those things sort of bubble all the way up to the highest levels of business. Next thing was a massive takeaway from the cash flow panel, and a few people on this panel, but shout out to Dinesh. He was super cool, and he was the ninja that Ryan described him as, like a ninja, because he's just doing all these like background things and nobody really knows what he's up to, but crazy investing strategy, crazy tax avoidance strategy. And he had been in a huge car accident like a year ago, and he told the story of just how that when he was in the hospital for months, business just fell away. And when in that situation, you're just not thinking about it, you're just not worrying about it. And it's easy for us to watch videos or podcasts or listen to books or whatever that tell us, oh, you should be investing, and shout out to Graham Stephan, like you should be investing, passive cash flow on this, and like that's so easy to know, but it was framed in a different way with this sort of like, this sort of downer type of story of like almost dying, and that like, if something happened to you, like your business would just stop, right? Mine would. I'm not at that point. I don't have passive investments, but it was such an interesting reframe on like thinking that you should invest, because like, no, you should invest for, worst case scenario too. Like, because it's easy to say like, oh, well, I'm gonna be making money next year and the next year and the next year, but what if I died? What if I I still want to be able to support and have things like sort of live on. So having that passive cash flow from investments is a way to sort of protect against yourself, and reframing it in that way was really interesting. And I'm trying to get to that level. I definitely need to get started on stuff like that. But yeah, that just reframed it in a way that was like way more, it just shocked me a bit. So the talk that might have had the biggest impact on me was from Ryan Moran himself. And the reason that I felt like this talk was like made for me, because as I kind of referenced a little bit, I've been kind of struggling. I don't really know what I even want to be doing. Like I think I've stopped having that hustle motivation, like working all the time, because I don't even know what I'm trying to do right now. Like that's the honest truth. Like I'm very grateful for what I've built. I'm grateful for YouTube. I'm grateful for my Amazon stuff. All of that stuff is great, but the thing is that like when I was broke, my motivation came from the fact that I didn't want to be broke, right? And the truth is that it only took me, like I didn't need to get to like here to feel like this. Really, it's like as soon as you're just like, okay, then the question just becomes like, well, what are you really trying to do? What do you want? Because when your back's against the wall, what you really want is for your back not to be against the wall. And that can be a huge motivation to make shit happen. But then for me at least, like once you just kind of get up to that middle level, then it's like, well, shit, like what do I want to be doing? How do I want to be spending my time? What do I want to build? Like what is the impact I want to have or what? And you know, a big aspect of his talk was just about just calming down, figure out what you really want. And I feel like that is the process that I'm going through right now, and figuring out what I want to double down on and what I want to do less of. And something that stuck out in his was just talking about like doing what you would be doing anyways. That was kind of the way he framed it. And you know, like what is the stuff that you would want to be doing anyways, and then figure out how to make a business around that. And you know, in some cases, following your passion might be a bad business idea. And I totally understand the passion is the getting your back off the wall. That's where I was. But like, again, once you're just a little bit off the wall, then you have to be thinking, what is something that is more enjoyable for you than just the fact that it can make you money? It's not enough, and you'll burn out the way that I have, the way that Ryan talks about that he has in different phases of his journey. And it's something that's where I am right now, is figuring out, you know, what is the thing that's really gonna drive me to, like, what is the thing that I want to be doing anyways. The next one that I really enjoyed was AJ Vaynerchuk. You may have heard of his brother. AJ's a bit different. He was a co-founder of VaynerMedia, which is Gary's, you know, what does he refer to it as now? $150 million, $200 million agency. What's really interesting is AJ was actually the one running it way back in the early days, even before Gary. And I love Gary as well, but AJ was so interesting because AJ is kind of like the calm, relatable version, normal version of Gary Vee, and he's not so intense and all of that. And in a way, like, I mean, they both know what they want, right? But what they want is different. Like, I think Gary knows that he wants it to be crazy and he wants it to be intense and all the time. And I think AJ knows that he doesn't. And he said that he didn't like VaynerMedia once it grew too big. It was stressful. He didn't like having all these people that he didn't even know anymore, and he just didn't like that. So he moved out of it, and now he's running Vayner Sports, which that's a kind of like a what you'd be doing anyways type of thing for him. He loves sports and he's just having a blast doing it, and he doesn't necessarily need to go for the billion, which is something that I've been thinking about, because I felt like this is back to also like what Ryan was saying, what do you even want? If you had asked me a few months ago, I would have said, I think what I want is to try to build a giant business, you know, $100 million or, you know, 10 million, 50 million, whatever it is. But the answer is why, and is that really what you even want? And for AJ, he was saying, you know, all I really need for my lifestyle is $1 million a year. And now, yes, $1 million is still a lot of money. It is nowhere near trying to make $1 billion, okay? Like, it's not, and it's weird because like, I still understand like the mindset thing, but it's nowhere near the same. If $1 million a year would take you 1,000 years to make $1 billion. So shooting for $1 million a year is much different than shooting for $1 billion. Like an order of magnitude different. And you can live very well for less than $1 million a year. So the way that I've been thinking about this is, it's like, do I want to try to build this giant thing and impact a bunch of people, or do I just want to figure out a simple way to make $500,000 a year and on the internet and chill and do things that I want to do and make videos and stuff like that. Like, you know, that's kind of like the two sides that I'm drawing between right now. And it was interesting to hear AJ like making that decision to go the other way, go for the passions, go for, you know, shooting to make $1 million a year, and rather than just going for the big thing that you don't even necessarily want, just so you can show everybody that you did that or something. He didn't want to, he didn't like it. So that was huge. And hearing that he, because I feel like I'm in a similar thought process to that, so hearing that he made that decision was really interesting. So next up was Susie Batiz, who is the founder of Poopery, and you've probably seen their viral ads. It's literally like a toilet spray that keeps your poop from smelling, and they are valued between $300 and $600 million for poop spray. So that was an interesting one. And oh, one other thing I want to say is that Ryan had JP Sears, a friend of his, and he's like the funny guy who makes these like parody spiritual videos. He was like the MC of the whole conference, and that was incredible. He was hilarious. That's going to be important in a second. Susie also, Poopery exploded through a viral video. Another one I'm about to talk to was the founder of Dollar Shave Club, also exploded through a viral video. So solution to being worth a lot of money, have a viral video. Not really, it's probably not that replicable, but it is interesting how there were a few of these parallels between those. So anyways, poop spray. What was most interesting about her talk was it was not very tactical, how to do this, how to do that, but it was just kind of about like the feelings and stuff like that, and intuition, and, you know, asking for help and things like that. And it was just a very cool talk, and it's a very cool product case study. I mean, it's just a crazy mind expander to think that some idea like that could be worth so much. So I think it's really cool that they've blown up that much. It's crazy. So next one I slightly mentioned, but Michael Dubin, the founder and CEO of Dollar Shave Club, they sold their business, I believe around a year ago, I could be off, for $1 billion to Unilever. And another, again, crazy case study, crazy physical product case study that's just at such a crazy scale. And they blew up through a viral video originally as well. They also both noted that when that happens, it breaks your business, because you're not necessarily ready for, you know, you're not necessarily ready for $2 million in sales in one day. If that happened to me right now, it's like, you know, you'd be out of stock in a minute, right? So it's interesting just how you have to think about how these things that are so massively good can also actually be kind of bad. So his talk was overall just really enjoyable and entertaining, and I wrote down just one thing that really stuck with me, and this is going to be related to in a minute when I'm talking about making money on the back end. But what was interesting about this is it's a subscription business, right? And subscription is extremely appealing because you have recurring revenue every month. And in short, the way these businesses scale is they scale by losing money up front, right? Because if you know that a customer is gonna be worth, say, $50 every single month to you, well then now in theory you could spend well over $50 to acquire that customer. You're just gonna be red for a while, right? You're gonna lose money up front because you know that money is coming back. What was interesting that he said, which is kind of obvious, but I never quite thought of it this way, is that when you're doing that, when you're going red to acquire customers to go positive, Ryan asked, when did you become profitable? And really, his answer was that it was a choice. And if they had got too tight on cash flow, they could always just scale back the ads and be profitable on the existing subscriptions. And that's easy because it's kind of like a safeguard against it going too crazy, out of hand, losing money when these companies are rapidly scaling. The fact that, like, you know, they have this recurring revenue, they could always just scale back on the acquisition and collect cash for a little bit and fix that cash flow. That was a really interesting way to think about it. Okay, the last one that I want to talk about is the most tactical, the most like business growth direct, maybe not like as much just mindset type of stuff, but this was really incredible on the other end of the spectrum. And this is Joel Marion, who is one of the co-owners of BioTrust, which is a supplement fitness type of brand that does around 100 million a year. And interestingly, they got to their first 100 million, I want to say, they're after 1 year of starting. It could have been one or two, but very quickly they got to 100 million, one of the quickest. So what's interesting about Joel is he has a background in internet marketing, not necessarily just like the physical product world, but he comes from, like, you know, the the affiliate world, and kind of like ClickBank type of stuff, where you're selling offers and you're doing sales and you're building massive email lists. He comes from that OG internet marketing world. So the way that they've applied that to this business is incredible. And so he talks a lot about who can pay the most for traffic. So whoever pays the most for traffic can get the lion's share of the market, was the way that he described it. Those were his words. And what he means is that if you can pay the most for traffic, that's because the traffic is worth the most for you. So there's two sides to this. It's that you need to know exactly what your numbers are. For example, if I acquire you as a customer, what are you worth to me in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, a year and a half, whatever. What is the LTV, the lifetime value? How much are you going to spend in the future with me? And by knowing those numbers really well, and by working with those numbers to increase the LTV, to increase the average order value, by getting that as high as possible, and by knowing those numbers, then you know exactly how much you can pay for it. So by optimizing those up, then you can afford to spend more on the traffic. And by the way, these same principles apply to Amazon or PPC. It's all the same, right? So they basically optimize in two ways, which is on the front end and the back end. The front end is for, how easily or cheaply can you acquire a lead or a customer, to get somebody to opt into an email list or something like that. And then on the back end, how high up can you get their average order value and LTV? And by doing both of those, you become the leader who can pay the most for traffic. And by knowing your numbers, you know exactly where that point is, where you would go profitable, and therefore you can offer more to affiliates, you can pay more for ads, all of that stuff, and that allows you to just blow up. So I hope those were some really valuable insights, especially if you weren't there, to be able to get an inside look on what happened and what I personally got out of it, because I'm sure if I got something out of it, you guys will as well. Please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps for the YouTube algorithm. Thumbs up, leave comments. Even if you don't have a question or whatever, just do those things. It really helps out. And if you do have a question or you do want to say something, I respond, and I see 100% and I respond to about 99.5% of comments. So please never hesitate to do those things. Let me know what you want to see more of, all of that. Definitely check out in the description. There is a link to a free entrepreneurship Facebook group. And you can also always check out my Zero to Brand course program, which is A to Z, everything you need to know to get up and running on Amazon, laying the foundation for building your scalable physical product brand. So I'd love to see you in there if you're ready to take a dive into that world. That said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
To a very large extent, our company consists in